Hey Sugar Geeks, Liz here. Today we're going to be making a boozy margarita cake, and this cake is so delicious. Tons of tequila, lime curd, and even a tequila jello shot on top. What's that TikTok video? Take a shot of tequila and don't make a face. It's coming up next on the Sugar Geek Show. Only for viewers 21 and older. All right, so to make our margarita cake, we're gonna have to do this in 3 parts. Stick with me. I know you're like, Liz, you always make things so complicated, but it's not complicated. We just have to make 3 different things and then we're gonna put it all together. The first step is to make our tequila gummy layer. Super easy. We're just going to sprinkle our gelatin onto some cold water, let that absorb for 5 minutes. That's called blooming. And then we're going to combine that with the margarita mix, the sugar, and the lime juice. And then you're going to microwave it for like 30 seconds until the gelatin granules are see-through and clear. Or you could put it in a saucepan and just like melt it over low heat. You don't have to use the microwave. Once that's melted, you can add in your tequila and your Grand Marnier, and then we're gonna pour like 3/4 of it into an ice cube tray. I'm using a silicone mold that I got from Target because they're nice little squares, but you could literally use any kind of tray that you have laying around. If you don't have an ice cube tray, you can pour this gummy mix into a square glass like Pyrex dish or something like that, let it set, and then cut it into squares. And then save the leftovers because we're gonna pour that on top of the cake later. Don't worry if it solidifies because you can just remelt it and pour it. Then we're gonna take the ice cube trays, pop that into the fridge for at least a couple hours, or you can do it overnight. When I took my ice cubes out of the tray, they tended to kind of crack and crumble a little bit, which I didn't really mind. I think it kind of added to the look of the margarita cake at the end. But if you don't want yours to crack and you want them to look really sharp, you can actually grease your trays a little bit to make sure that they hold their shape. Okay, that part is done. See, I told you, it was easy. Step 2, we're gonna make our lime curd. You guys, this cake should just be called lime curd cake because it is literally the star of the show. It is so yummy. I could just eat the lime curd, but I'm like a citrus lover, so this was right up my alley. Okay, so to make our lime curd, we're gonna combine the egg yolks and the cornstarch and the salt together and just whisk it until it's smooth. Then in a saucepan, we're gonna add our lime juice, the sugar, the lime zest, whisk that all together and then bring it to a simmer over medium heat. So once your mixture is simmering, we're going to take a cup of that hot liquid out and put it into our egg mixture and whisk it. And this is called tempering. We're just controlling the temperature of the egg mixture. If we were to just dump all of that eggs into the hot liquid, you would basically end up with scrambled eggs with like lime flavoring. This is not gonna be good. So this starts the process of thickening up those eggs and gets them to the temperature that we need them to be. And now we're going to keep whisking continuously until this mixture reaches about 170 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's gonna make sure that it's thick enough that it's gonna hold its shape when it's inside the cake and we slice it. Totally optional, but you can add like a splash of tequila and maybe some Grand Marnier in there too. I mean, why not, right? Now we're going to add our unsalted butter in chunks and whisk that all together until it's nice and smooth. Then we're gonna take some plastic wrap, place it on top so that you don't get a skin that forms over the top because you literally cannot get rid of that and it's really nasty. So put the plastic wrap so that it's touching the top of the curd, pop that into the fridge and let it refrigerate for a couple hours or overnight. Just kind of like the gummies, you see where I'm going here? And now we're done. Okay, so now finally we're getting to the lime cake part of this project. This lime cake is based off of my white cake recipe. It's made with all-purpose flour instead of cake flour because I felt like it needed to be a little bit firmer than my traditional lemon cake recipe. But if you wanted to use that recipe, you totally could. Just switch out the lemon zest for lime zest and it's gonna be a much softer cake. So step 1, weigh out all of your ingredients, make sure they're room temperature. And by room temperature, I mean like a little bit warm. You want your butter to be soft, but not melted. You want your milk to be a little bit warm, but not hot. And this is gonna make sure that everything blends together and makes a nice emulsion. If it curdles, it can not rise as much. You might get that little wet layer at the bottom. So take the time to make sure eggs, milk, butter, all room temperature, slightly warm. So combine together the flour, the baking powder, and the salt and set it aside. Then we're gonna take our milk, our oil, tequila, lemon extract, lime juice, and then mix that together and set it aside. Cream together your butter and your sugar until it's nice and white and fluffy. I think this is probably the #1 step that people don't do correctly when they're first learning to make cakes, is they just don't cream their butter and sugar together enough. And one reason could be that your butter is too cold. So if your butter is cold, it will not cream with the sugar. So you just kind of end up with this crumbly texture and you're like, well, I guess that's the way it's supposed to look. Or you just don't do it for long enough. It really needs to incorporate that air and get really nice and white and fluffy, because that's literally 90% of the texture of the cake right there. If you have a Bosch mixer like me, it should take 2 to 3 minutes on setting 1, or maybe 5 minutes on setting 2 on a KitchenAid. If you're curious about my Bosch mixer, I have a link down there in the description below the video. It's awesome. It's the best mixer ever. Okay, so now we're gonna start adding in our egg whites to the butter and sugar mixture. Technically, you're supposed to do this like 1 egg at a time. So I just kind of go in like thirds. Just take your time, let it mix in there. You can't overdo it, it's fine. So now that we've mixed our eggs into our butter and sugar mixture and we've created the emulsion, now we can start adding in the stabilizers, which is our dry ingredients, and our liquid ingredients, which is add moisture and activates the gluten in the flour. This is way too much information for you, but here you go, okay? Start off with about 1/3 of your flour mixture, let that mix in, and then you're gonna add in about half your liquids, let that mix in. 1/3 of the dry, the rest of your liquids, and then the rest of your dry. And then don't forget to add in your lime zest, because I almost forgot mine. You could probably put that in with the milk. So now our cake is done. Now we're going to grease our pans with cake goop. I'm using 3 6-inch by 2-inch pans, but you could use 2 8-inch by 2-inch pans. If you want to use any other size pan, you can. Go to the blog post. There's a cake batter and frosting calculator right above the recipe. Enter in any size pan you want and it will tell you how much batter you want to actually make. I like to use a scale just to like make sure it's perfectly the same, because I like my layers to be like perfect. And we are gonna bake these in the oven at 335 degrees for about 35 to 45 minutes. It just depends on your oven. It might bake faster, it might bake slower. Do a little test, see if the center is set with a toothpick. You know, I give mine a little tap on top, see if it bounces back. So keep an eye on your cakes and try not to overbake them. Once your cakes are baked, you're gonna want them to hang out in the pan for 10 to 15 minutes, basically until you can just touch the pan and it's warm but not hot, you don't want to burn your hands, and flip them out onto a cooling rack, and then you can wrap and freeze them right away if you don't want to decorate the cake right away. Or I just put them in the freezer to like flash chill. Freezing your cakes actually locks in moisture. So even if you're gonna like decorate it the next day, just put it in the freezer and take it out when you're ready to decorate. All right, so now it's time to put our cake together. I like to slice the dome off the tops of my cake so they're nice and flat, and I also trim the brown part off of the outside edges and on the back, just so the slices are all pretty-like. I'm gonna place them on top of a cake board, and then I'm going to make a dam of buttercream so that my curd does not ooze out the sides. It is gonna be pretty firm, but it takes some time to like set up, so you don't want it to accidentally burst out the sides of your cake from the weight of the other layers. I also like to do a very thin layer of buttercream against the layer of cake so that the curd doesn't soak into the cake. Not that it's a bad thing, but it just looks prettier to have the curd just all there in the center. Make sure you keep your curd about 1/4 inch thick. You don't want to be putting so much curd in there that it's like gonna ooze out, so less is more. And trust me, the flavor is so strong, you don't need a ton. I'm using my easy buttercream recipe. You can get the link right here. Once your layers are stacked, we're gonna give it a quick crumb coat. This just seals in all of those crumbs so they don't get into the final layer of cake. Pop it into the fridge for 15 minutes or so, and then we can do our final layer of buttercream. I'm using my bench scraper to smooth out the outside edges. I'm using my offset spatula to smooth out the top. If you need to have more directions on how to frost like your cake and get perfectly sharp edges and all that, I have a beginner's tutorial right there for you, step by step. I'm gonna transfer my cake to a cake board, or you could transfer it to a cake platter, a pedestal, whatever you want. And now we're gonna do the gummy layer. So for this, I'm using a cake collar, which you can get on Amazon, or you could use pieces of acetate and just cut them shorter. You don't need it to cover the whole cake. It just needs to go around that upper edge. And you just want to make sure that the acetate is making a good connection with the cake. I kind of rub it with my hands, push it on there, make sure it's got a good seal. And you want to do this before you refrigerate it because the acetate doesn't stick to the buttercream when it's cold. And then we're going to fill in the gap with more buttercream. Sometimes a little bit of a gap between the acetate and the actual cake, so you don't want any of that gelatin leaking down below. So pipe the gap, smooth it out with your finger, make sure it looks all nice. And then we're gonna put this back into the fridge for like 15 minutes just to set the buttercream. Once it's set, you can put the ice cubes on top. Like I said, it doesn't matter if they break. It kind of just adds to that crushed ice look. And then we're going to warm up our gelatin if we have to. If I mean, yours is probably set for sure. Then you only need to warm it for maybe 15 seconds and it's liquid enough. And if it's super hot, let it cool down a little bit before you pour it onto your buttercream because it will melt it. Pour that over your ice cubes. You should end up with about a 1/4 inch of that gummy layer on top, and then just pop it back into the fridge for, I would probably say at least 30 minutes till it sets, or you could leave it in there overnight if you want to. And then all you have to do is peel the acetate off, and it leaves this super cute gummy layer on top that makes it look like the whole cake is a giant margarita glass. It's so adorable. So what would a margarita cake be without some sugar around the top? Now, are you team sugar or are you team salt? So I was talking to my assistant and I was like, so we're gonna put sugar around the edge. And she was like, no, salt. And I was like, excuse you? But she says that a lot of people do salt. I always do sugar. So let me know in the comments, salt or sugar. And I'm using that really chunky, like sanding sugar that you get in the sprinkle containers because it kind of looks like granulated sugar that you would use for a margarita glass, and it actually kind of looks like salt too. So if you wanted to have a salt look but not put salt on your cake, because why would you? Then you could use that. And then I'm gonna slice some limes really thinly and place them around the outside edge of the cake. If your buttercream is too cold, the limes will not stick. So you might have to add a little extra buttercream to the backs of the limes to get them to stick. And then I also took a lime, added a toothpick, and put that on the very top because it just finishes the whole outfit and makes it look just like a glass of margarita. It's like so, so cute. So everyone always asks, how long does this type of cake last in the fridge? Because it's got gelatin, it's got curd, doesn't need to be refrigerated. Probably no more than 24 hours because the gummy layer starts to shrink after a day or so. If that doesn't bother you, then it's fine, but that liquid does continue to evaporate out of the gelatin layer, so don't make it too far in advance. I think this is the perfect cake to bring to like a Cinco de Mayo party, or it could be like someone's 21st birthday, and I really feel like it tastes the best fresh, right? And once you cut into it, it's kind of hard to keep it from drying out. Remember to take it out of the fridge a few hours before you slice into it, because cold cake is hard cake and it tastes like dry cake, but it's not dry, it's just cold. All right, it is time to eat the margarita cake. You guys see my earrings? I really wish they were limes, but they're lemons, but I got them just for this video because they're so cute. Look at this. Look at this gorgeous lime curd. The cake is so moist. It gets you right back here. It's that super tart from the lime, but then you have the sweetness from the buttercream, and then you have that moist texture of the cake, and it all comes together to make like this perfect balance. And you can taste the tequila, but it's not super strong. I'm not gonna lie though, these little gummy shots on top. What's that TikTok video? Take a shot of tequila and don't make a face. There's some tequila in there. You cannot eat one of those gummies and not make a face. It's strong. That's it, you guys. In just a short, so that's it, guys. In just 52 short steps, you too can make a margarita cake. I need one of those gummies again. Where I need another one. Wait. I'll get it next time. Just one more gummy. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I can't wait to see your guys' margarita cakes. Please tag me on social media at Sugar Geek Show, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.